In this video, I want to discuss directly the concepts of getting stimulated and moving from stimulation to interest and engagement. And these are all various processes. So there's three component processes here: stimulation, and the second process is going to be interest, and the third is going to be engagement. And when we're self-stimulating, this is very, very important for promoting positive well-being, because it's ultimately a way of connecting to what we find interesting and cultivating meaning, not through, say, direct experiences of meaning as it is, because in some cases there might be meaning that we're experiencing regarding various, maybe it's colors that we're seeing, or it's a smell, or it's a sound that we hear. And then there's an interpretation of that, or a representation that we perceive, right? And that representation might not be significant or impart any sort of value or nudge us in any way that is positive or productive. But when we engage in that and we become curious and we start to develop these other systems of meaning and really capitalize on the meaning that we're perceiving and expand that meaning, we expand the self in relation to that by broadening our perceptions, broadening our motivational systems, our emotional systems, our feeling systems, our action-based systems, and our behavioral systems within relation to that. And how that's occurring is primarily through this perceptual stimulation, and we're unfolding the meaning through it and really adding on to it and forming these associations with other memories or other thoughts that are operating within our perceptual field, maybe what's currently in the moment and present, or ideas that we have and thoughts that we have as they pop up, and we make these connections. And another way of doing this is through actions or through behaviors that we directly connect. So we might engage with some aspect of our environment through more of a motor route or a manual route, or visually or auditory, because maybe we're talking to ourselves, or maybe you're more artistic, so you draw something, or you sculpt, and you put stuff together, and this will spark a new set of ideas and can really start to increase the stimulation that's occurring within perception, but also within psychological processes in our brain. So that's where a lot of the stimulation's occurring, and then physiological processes that are connecting that wiring to our various behaviors. And then there's this stimulation that's being paired with a stimulus or stimuli that's associated with, where we're starting to develop interest in that, and the extent that we're experiencing positive emotion and absorption in an activity like that, we move from the stimulation to activating this process of interest that takes us into engagement. So when we unfold through our own self-stimulations interest, we can start to form a bridge that gets us to engagements through interactions occurring through a pathway of interest primarily, and that connects us through our perceptual systems, our psychological systems, and our physiological systems in one constituency, linking us in the environment. And this doesn't necessarily have to require direct contact. It can require a complete perceptual apparatus, where we can just be staring at an object in a room and think about it in various different ways, maybe different contexts, put a spin on it, change the environment in which it's thought about, or give it new properties or characteristics, play it out in the fantasies of our imagination. Maybe it's a stick you see, and then from the stick you have more of this fantasy mind. So out comes, maybe it's a giant tree trunk that transforms, and then it can grow arms or something like that, and it's like this becomes this hero's guardian or friend or something, and they go out and they live a story. But it started off with just this stick that you're seeing in your room, and all of a sudden you find yourself, you've been sitting in that room for 15 minutes just thinking about playing with this idea that was sparked from an object that you saw in your room, and you're making all these leaps through the psychological stimulation, and it captivates your interests, it's pulling you in, And eventually, through that pathway of interest, you become absorbed and you lose your sense of time, and that's when we get to a pathway of engagement. And we see that engagement is very much associated with meaning, and it's often associated through meaning through three pathways here. The stimulation of whatever we're perceiving meaning in, then interest, it's formed from that stimulation, and then the interest connects us to types of engagement, which has to do with the amount of energy and effort that's being absorbed and dedicated in a particular direction. And that's a way you can think of engagement. So that's just a brief summary of that. I'll be talking more about that in future videos, and I'll be creating more content that will go in greater detail with it and really formalize it, instead of just going off on these vlogs that is compiling a whole bunch of information in more of a haphazard way compared to more of a formal lecture, which will be upcoming, and I'll be creating more of these, creating video lectures as well as lectures with PowerPoints that I'll put online, expressing these ideas more clearly, but also creating series that supplement that, and will show you how to engage and to make use of these ideas in more of these valuable ways. So I hope you enjoy.